Alright, what is going on, guys? It is your boy TKD123 here, back in your PlayStation Source, and I want to bring you guys a little bit of a gameplay demo review here for this game called Metal Eden. This demo is free for all platforms on PS5, Xbox Series S and X, and PC. It took me about an hour to beat. It's the first two missions of the game, but I want to just sit down here and give you guys my hypes, my holdups, and what exactly is Metal Eden. So before we get to my thoughts here on the demo, let's talk about what exactly is Metal Eden in case you didn't know. Metal Eden is a sci-fi, fast-paced, first-person action shooter developed by Rycon Games and published by Deep Silver. The game releases in just under a month here on May 6th for PlayStation 5, alongside Xbox Series X and S and PC, but y'all know it'll probably play best on PS5, you know what I'm saying? Maybe, most likely, you know. That's a joke. That's a joke. But in Metal Eden, players will embody an advanced battle android, also known as a hyper unit in the game, named Asuka, on a grand mission to save the consciousness of humanity that's trapped in these storage units in the center of this floating monolithic city of Mobius on planet Vulcan. Armed with an array of weapons, parkour movements, and abilities at hand, Asuka will dispatch the enemies on her journey alongside the powerful engineers controlling said enemies to save humanity from their once new home turned into a deadly trap. And for me, man, listen, this game has it all in terms of the overall kind of ambiance and the premise. I think it's super cool. This really futuristic sci-fi story where you're saving the human consciousness and the storage units. Like, it sounds pretty wild here, but let's go into the hypes involving this game that I played here on the demo. I did play this game on PS5 Pro, which you're seeing here on screen, in 1440p capture, and it did look great on quality mode, but it ran at a not so 60 frames per second. Honestly, close enough, not really. Honestly, there were a lot of drops, but we'll get to that here in the hold up section later on in the video. If you want to skip to that, time codes are down below in the description. But this game has really deep, saturated, punchy colors that are my favorite in my sci-fi stories, and it has a really cool overall kind of metal sheen look to it, very cyberpunk-esque in a way. It looks really good. And getting into the actual gameplay of this game, it really did kind of blend Doom meets Ghostrunner into my head, where the Doom comparison comes to pass with Metal Eden having an expanded weapon wheel of weapons to unlock, such as pistols, assault rifles, shotguns, and more limited use power weapons that were also in stages in the demo, like a minigun here that you can see here on screen. This minigun was really fun to use, in spite of the frame rate in that section, because that minigun really tanked the frame rate, but we'll get to that later on, okay? We'll get to it later on. And for me, that Ghostrunner comparison really comes in with the game's overall layout, with it being stage-based, an emphasis on the parkour aspects, such as wall running, platforming, and zip lines, along with the game's excellent gameplay loop and the way they set up engagements in this game, because much like Ghostrunner, Metal Eden has really well designed combat in closed spaces to dispatch different enemies. And while Ghostrunner, you only really had those set number of enemies, in Metal Eden you had waves of them coming at you, and the announcer would say, you know, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, and it felt like a really fun way to use this enclosed space that they set up, that had a bunch of different jump paths to be able to go from area to area to take out enemies. You had different armors that were on cooldowns that you can get if you were needing something in a pinch, along with health and everything. And it was just a really cool way to really get you moving in fight and playing aggressively, while giving you the tools to be able to do so at a successful pace. And it was a really cool way to use your arsenal and the movement mechanics in combat very eloquently, just like Ghostrunner. But aside from the Doom and Ghostrunner comparisons, Metal Eden does have a very specific, unique mechanic where Asuka can pull the core out of enemies at close range to not only kill them instantly, but have the core act as a projectile towards other enemies to deal damage or break shields. But the core can also be harnessed by Asuka herself to deal a boost in combat and deal a devastating power punch for bigger enemies that spawn throughout the game. So this core system really did kind of, you know, once again, I am going to compare it again, did remind me of this management that you have to do in Doom, where you have to do different aspects of the gameplay to give you different rewards on an enemy by enemy basis. So for example, in Doom, you have to use the chainsaw to get ammo, or burn the demons to get armor drops, right? So it created this very nice kind of dance combat where you have to do a different variety of things and attacks to get certain rewards that you may need in the moment. That made it feel like a dance, right? Metal Eden has this same kind of flow with the core system here, where when a big enemy spawned during combat, I had to wait until smaller enemies spawned, or hopefully there was one that was already there, and I was able to wait my cooldown to get a core from them, and then be able to use a power punch on that heavier enemy to be able to get the jump on them in a much more efficient way. So overall, like the way that, you know, early on in this demo, I am seeing those little cracks of a potential dance in combat like Doom has. I think this is definitely shaping up to be a really fun game in that way, and kind of borrow that element of having a bit of a dance combat to the overall game flow. One other very small touch that I did want to fit here in this hype section is that they have a very untraditional way of switching your weapons, because they use R1 in Metal Eden to switch weapons, and when you hold it down you get your weapon wheel, right? So at first this did throw me off, as it forgoes the usual triangle button to switch weapons, but the more I used it, the more I understood why they did it this way and put R1, because R1 is right next to R2, and while you're in this fast combat arena and you're really doing your thing with these engagements and getting enemies, and there's a bunch of them spawning at the same time, you're gonna want a way to be able to switch your weapons very quickly, and having that default R1 to do that really does keep the pace of combat going, with you being able to swap weapons and get to firing at a very quick fashion, which is R1 and R2, right? But the game does have an awkward system where it saves the last two weapons that you last used to be weapons 1 and 2 that you tap between when you just press R1, and if you want to get to weapon 3, for example, it might be a little bit hard to get over. At least I found it a little bit difficult to remember that, oh yeah, right, I gotta hold it down and then get the weapon wheel out, because in other games that is tied to a whole different button as a whole. So that took a little bit to get used to, but overall I did find success with R1 being able to switch weapons with that button, even though it's not traditionally so in those first-person shooters. And definitely, man, so long as that story does not overstay its welcome and it's pretty tight and overall concise and not an overbloated thing, I think that this game could be very, very fun in terms of the full game, with the gameplay being definitely something that I was enjoying my time with on the demo. But let's go into some holdups here for Metal Eden, and that is that there is this really weird right stick look behavior that happens in the demo. Let me know down below, guys, if you have played it, because I have this thing where I'll start to move the camera over to the left or the right, and then it'll be like a slow section, and then it will jump to a much faster camera speed, and I feel like that may be a bug. There's just no way that that behavior is intentional for the game itself. I was looking in the settings, I couldn't find anything to fix it, so I'm hoping that this is some kind of glitch here with the demo, some kind of bug with the demo, because if it controls like this at launch, that's going to be a big problem. Hoping for a day one patch to fix that. But another big thing here that I've said multiple times here on this video already, this game does not run particularly well, man. You know me, all right? I'm 60 frames king, okay? And at least on quality mode on PS5 Pro, it did run decently well. Not the best when it comes to a lot of effects on screen, especially with that minigun section that I said before. Definitely had some frame drops there, and I switched to performance mode and the game just ran really jittery, not great at all. So I switched it back to quality, because that was honestly smoother than performance for some reason, but definitely not the best running game in terms of performance. So I'm really hoping that the full day one patch or the full game release will have a much better performing build when the game comes out and ships officially. And according to the settings, I mean, the settings itself really aren't that great in terms of visual things that you can tweak on PS5 Pro, but a big thing that's missing is that you cannot eliminate motion blur from this game, which is a big L in my opinion. Not a fan of that. Do not like motion blur in my game, so I really hope that we can have that setting in the game when it launches to be able to turn it off completely. Not a big fan of that. And lastly here, I guess in the gameplay loop, sometimes in fast chaotic, you know, combat engagements, the L1 prompt to take out an enemy's core sometimes wasn't working properly and just straight up just would not work after multiple tries and me trying to press L1 and get the enemy's core. So I would have to like back up a little bit, then come back in and then engage L1, then I'll be able to grab the core. So that seems to be kind of a broken thing right now in the demo. So hopefully that gets ironed out as well with the full game. But overall, man, you know, there was some gripes, you know what I'm saying? There was some gripes, not the most perfect demo, but Metal Eden is a very fun game. I highly recommend you guys check it out on your platform of choice, whether it be Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. Go play Metal Eden hour-long demo. I had a great time with it, and I definitely cannot wait until the game comes out. If you have played the Metal Eden demo, down below, let me know your thoughts about the game. Did you like it? What are your hypes? What are your holdups? Let me know all your thoughts down below about Metal Eden, and keep it locked here on PlayStation Source to keep up with the latest and greatest in PlayStation. Thank you all for watching, and as always, greatness awaits.